I'm a really big Jet Set Radio fan. My first introduction was the HD remaster of the first game on the PS3. I eventually got JSRF and instantly fell in love with the series all over again. Such a huge improvement over the first one. Unfortunately, those are the only two games in the series, and Sega hasn't really given the franchise much love besides showing some representation in Sonic Racing. From the outside looking in, you'd think that nobody even knows that this series even exists. However, if you look closely, you'll find that there's actually a whole community of dedicated Jet Set Radio fans, to the point that you wouldn't believe that this was just a video game series. Seeing all of these dedicated fans has inspired me to think what a new game could possibly look like, and would there be a market for it? So this is just some kind of rough ideas on what I think a Jet Set Radio revival game would look like. It's not finished by any means, but I'm going to be covering some basic things like what I think the story would be like, some gameplay, the music that they would put in it, possibly how some promotion stuff would work, and then, if push comes to shove, DLC. So let's go ahead and start with story. The way I see it, there's two ways that this story can go. Either arcade, which is minimal story, or a full-on story-driven game. If the arcade route was chosen, I would imagine that the story would be minimal, probably another Rikaku group trying to take over, and the emphasis would be more on little side missions and racking up points with tricks, grinds, graffiti, and so on. Kind of similar to how the original games were. However, the path that I would hope that they choose, as it is my personal favorite, is to go with the full-fledged story. And when I say full story, I'm talking full animated cutscenes, voice acting between missions or during missions to get you excited to go do the thing, and just something to really get the player involved with what's going on in the world. I would be fine with either playstyle, combination of the two, or maybe a third one that I haven't thought of, but for story, that's kind of where I think it would be. Now we gotta talk about the gameplay. Thanks to Jet Set Radio, I also fell in love with a little gem called Sunset Overdrive. And honestly, when I think of a new Jet Set Radio game, I basically just want Sunset Overdrive, but Jet Set Radio Edition. I do know that Sunset was inspired by JSR, but now I think it's time for JSR to be inspired by Sunset. Be very focused on the traversal, focused on skating and doing tricks in a big world that, is open for the players to do that. But something that Sunset Overdrive did that I think would be a really unique addition to a Jet Set Radio title is a character creator, or customizing the characters that are already there. Recently, Jet Set Radio Live had I guess you could call it a promotion going around, where everybody made their own characters and stuff like that. So why not implement something like that into a game? Just from top to bottom, customize their skin, their hair color, hairstyles, the clothing they wear, customize the skates, just make it look real nice, Alternatively, if Sega was not open to the idea of customizing your own character, then I would at least like to customize the characters that are already there. Maybe by doing some missions or taking out the other rival gangs, you unlock their trademark styles and outfits and stuff. So imagine playing as like Gum, but with Love Shocker's gear. Now we gotta talk about the music. I've seen a few other videos where they talk about what kind of music they'd like to see in a new Jet Set Radio game. And one of the really common things is that everyone always says they want EDM. EDM is like the big thing that everybody wants. And I agree. I think EDM is a welcome addition to Jet Set Radio. However, looking back at the other original soundtracks and even looking at the aesthetic of the game entirely, there are other genres that I also think need to be represented. I personally wouldn't want for it to be EDM and EDM only, The first two soundtracks also featured some old school sounding hip hop, It also had some kind of rock songs and stuff in between. I think this new one shouldn't be any different. Although I do really love Sunset Overdrive, Jet Set Radio celebrates all of the underground, whereas Sunset was really punk rock based. So I say that to say that with the music, it doesn't have to be a one set mold. It can kind of use whatever it wants. And while yeah, it probably would be cool to have some mainstream artists make a song for the game, I don't feel like that fits with the vibe. I definitely feel like some indie artists would really fit into the underground narrative that Jet Set Radio has. So we have a really rough outline of what this game would kind of look like and sound like, but how would we promote it? Looking back at that Jet Set Radio Live Twitter page, you can see that the fans are really invested into this series. Again, from the outside looking in, you wouldn't even think that this was a game. You'd think that this was some kind of movement. The original Jet Set Radio on the Dreamcast was released like 20 years ago. So the only thing that I would say for those types of fans that have been with the series for that long would maybe release some kind of physical version. But other than that, I think all Sega needs to do is snap their fingers. The last thing I wanted to touch on was DLC. I know that DLC is a touchy subject, but I will say that it is a good way to give us more content without having to remake an entire other game. That being said, I'm not saying that I do or don't want DLC for this game, but if it was going to be in there, these are the kinds of things that I think would make sense and that I would like to see. First of all, costumes, or skins, or outfits, or whatever you choose to call them, for the different characters, whether that be the character creator or for the GGs himself. This would be a new game, so I would assume that the characters would get redesigned, but I wouldn't mind buying a JSRF pack, for example, that gives you the skins or costumes of the JSRF versions of all the characters, or even the original Jet Set Radio, and then of course there's original ideas that they could throw in between. The other form of DLC that I think that they could do would be adding other characters. And they could be original skaters and stuff, sure, fine. But the idea that excites me the most is introducing other Sega characters, or even some indie characters. Really easy common idea we've all dreamed about was Jet Set Sonic, and now could be the time to finally put him in there. Or some other characters like Ooh La La. I know this is a bit of a stretch too, but you'll notice that people have been so passionate about this series that there's other fan love letter projects like Hover and Neon Tail. I think it would be really cool as like a thank you to these developers if Sega reached out to them and asked if they wanted one of their characters to be in this new Jet Set Radio game. And then of course, music as DLC for this game. I would hope that a lot of this kind of stuff would already be a part of it, but I would totally be down to pay for remixes of JSR and JSRF tracks as DLC. I would imagine that they would make new music for this game, and possibly remix some of the older songs for nostalgia purposes. Any of the JSR and JSRF tracks that weren't already remixed and included in the original game could then be remixed and sold as DLC. And if we're going to be including Sega characters as DLC, I think it'd be cool to introduce some remixes of songs from the games that they came from. Anyway guys, that's just kind of what I think a JSR revival game could look like. If you agree or disagree with me, go ahead and leave a comment. I'm very fascinated to hear what you guys have to say. Also, I'm really new to this, so it would mean a lot to me if you could go ahead and hit that like button and even maybe subscribe. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day.